You see me sitting here in this well-appointed chair, the light catching the fine weave of my suit. I am 77 years old. By all outward appearances, I am the very picture of a life well lived, a man of dignity, of quiet accomplishment. People look at me and they see a story of success, of prudence. They see the kind of man they hope to become. But I've asked you here to listen, not to look. I need to tell you a truth that has taken me a lifetime to face, a truth that festers beneath this impeccable wool. The truth is, I consider myself the greatest failure to ever walk this earth, not because of what I did, but because of the man I never allowed myself to be. My life wasn't a journey. It was a long, silent rehearsal for a play that was never performed. This house is my stage, and the audience has long gone home. My days are a monument to order. I wake at precisely 6, I select a suit, I tie my tie with a perfect Windsor knot, even though there is no one here to see it. This house, you see, is not a home. It is a museum dedicated to a man who never existed. Each polished surface reflects a calm, composed stranger. The silence here used to be a comfort, a shield. Now it has a weight, a voice of its own. It screams with the echoes of every risk I didn't take, every "I love you" that died on my tongue, every brilliant idea that I locked away in a drawer. The great tragedy of my life isn't a single dramatic event. It's the slow, crushing accumulation of a million moments of cowardice, a million instances where I chose the illusion of safety over the messy, unpredictable, and beautiful reality of being truly alive. My armor kept me safe from everything, including life itself. My mother taught me that dignity was a man's greatest asset. She'd say, "Arthur, you swallow your tears. You hide your pain. A man who shows his cracks is a man who will be broken." I learned the lesson too well. I became a master of the calm exterior, the witty deflection, the polite smile that kept the world at a comfortable arm's length. For decades, this felt like strength. My life was a fortress of my own design, impenetrable and orderly. Every morning, I would choose a tie like a soldier choosing a weapon. Every evening, I would read a book on economics, not for pleasure, but to reinforce the walls. I had acquaintances, of course, men I'd lunch with who spoke of stock prices and golf swings, but never of their fears. Women I'd charm at dinner parties who saw a distinguished, self-possessed gentleman, but never the boy inside who was terrified of being truly seen. I built a life that looked perfect on paper, a life others might envy, but it was a life lived behind glass, and I was the only one who knew the air inside was growing thin. The silence in this house is a physical thing now. It's not the peaceful quiet of solitude, it's the hollow echo of absence. My routine is my only companion, the ritual of brewing a single cup of tea, the careful way I fold the newspaper after reading it, leaving no unseemly creases. These are the small, meaningless acts that fill the vast emptiness of the hours. I walk through these rooms and I see the ghosts of 1,000 unmade decisions. By the window, the ghost of the life I would have had with Sarah, had I just found the courage to say what I felt instead of what I thought was clever. In my study, the ghost of the entrepreneur I might have become if I hadn't locked my best ideas in a drawer, afraid they weren't perfect enough. My life has been a long, quiet process of choosing dignity over love, safety over passion, and appearance over truth. I preserved my armor so perfectly that I forgot there was a man inside. Now, the armor is all that's left. It happened on a Tuesday morning, a day no different from the 10,000 Tuesdays that preceded it. I was standing before the mahogany dresser in my bedroom, adjusting the knot of my tie in the mirror. The world outside was a muted gray, the light soft and forgiving. I was performing the final step of my morning armor, a small, precise dimple just below the knot. That's when the world tilted, not violently, but with a slow, sickening certainty, like a ship taking on water. The polished wood of the dresser felt slick and cold beneath my suddenly weak grip. A fine sheen of sweat broke out on my brow, and the reflection in the mirror blurred, the familiar, composed face of Arthur dissolving into a pale, unrecognizable mask of an old man. My heart, a quiet and reliable servant for 77 years, began to hammer against my ribs, not with vigor, but with a frantic, terrified rhythm. It was the first time in my life that my body had staged a rebellion against my will, a stark physical reminder that the fortress was, and always had been, built on sand. The spell passed in less than a minute. The room settled, the floor became solid again, and my heart retreated to its usual measured beat. My first instinct, the instinct of a lifetime, was to rationalize it away. A moment of low blood sugar, perhaps, standing up too quickly. I straightened my suit jacket, smoothed my tie, and looked back into the mirror, willing the composed man to return. But he was gone. In his place was a stranger with fear in his eyes. The silence of the house, once a symbol of my control and solitude, suddenly felt predatory. It was no longer empty. It was filled with the deafening sound of my own mortality. I could feel the seconds ticking away, each one a grain of sand falling in an hourglass I had ignored for decades. The routine, my trusted shield, was shattered. Trying to continue my day, to pick up the newspaper and brew my tea, felt like an absurd pantomime. The play was over. The stage was collapsing. And I was the only actor left, staring into the abyss of an empty auditorium. That single moment of dizziness did what 77 years of quiet contemplation could not. It ripped away the intellectual abstraction of death and replaced it with a visceral, gut-wrenching certainty. It wasn't the fear of oblivion that seized me. It was the terror of the inventory. I saw, with horrifying clarity, the final accounting of my life. A column of meticulously preserved dignity on one side, and on the other, a vast empty ledger where love, passion, and purpose should have been. I thought of my landlord, a man I exchanged pleasantries with once a month. He would be the one to find me. He would notice the uncollected mail, use his key, and find a well-dressed old man who had simply stopped. My death would be as orderly and unremarkable as my life. No one would weep because no one truly knew me. No one would miss a voice they'd never really heard. The armor I had so carefully polished my entire life wouldn't be a monument to my strength. It would be my coffin. And in that cold, sterile silence, a new feeling began to stir beneath the terror. It was not hope. It was something more primal. A final, desperate urgency. My life could not be saved. My past could not be rewritten. The great love was lost. The great work was undone. But the story of my magnificent failure that could still be of use. I could not undo my choices, but I could strip away the facade and offer the raw, painful truth as a warning. My life had been a long lesson in how not to live, and perhaps its only value, its only meaning, was to be found in the telling. It was the one authentic act I had left, the one thing I could do that wasn't safe, or prudent, or dignified. I would break my own silence. I would take this perfectly preserved failure, this empty, beautiful shell of a life, and I would hold it up to the light so that someone, somewhere, could see the cracks and learn to live before it was too late. I found myself standing in the kitchen, my hand hovering over the silver tea caddy, but the ritual felt alien. The familiar motions, the precise scoop of leaves, the wait for the kettle's whistle, it was all a hollow pantomime. The silence I had once curated as a sign of intellectual solitude now pressed in on me, thick and suffocating. I looked at the perfectly aligned books on my shelves, their spines unbroken, and saw not a library of wisdom but a cemetery of unlived adventures. Each polished surface in this house, once a testament to my order, now reflected a ghost. The terrifying clarity of it all was that my legacy would be one of neatness. The landlord, a man whose first name I'm not even sure of, would find me. He would note the lack of disruption, the paid bills on the desk, and he would call the necessary anonymous services. My entire existence would be tidied away with the impersonal efficiency of a housekeeping service, leaving no trace, no story, no scar upon the world. My life's great work was to become an easily managed estate. My mind, unmoored from its daily anchor of routine, drifted back to the one storm I should have sailed into. It drifted back to Sarah. I remembered a Saturday afternoon in a small art gallery. She was standing before a chaotic splash of colors, her head tilted, a small, genuine smile on her face. She asked me what I thought it meant. I remember launching into a prepared intellectual analysis, quoting some critic I'd read, trying to sound insightful, sophisticated. I was performing, but I missed it. I missed the real question in her eyes, which was not about the painting. It was an invitation to be messy, to be wrong, to just be there with her. I was so busy rehearsing my lines in the mirror of my mind that I never showed up for the play. She eventually fell in love with a man who probably couldn't tell a Monet from a placemat, but who knew how to hold her hand and say, "I have no idea, but I'm glad I'm seeing it with you." He didn't offer dignity, he offered himself. I offered an impeccable empty suit. From the gallery, my thoughts walked me into my study. They led me to the bottom right-hand drawer of my mahogany desk. I haven't opened it in 30 years, but I don't need to. I know exactly what's inside. A business plan, 50 pages typed with a precision that borders on madness, outlining a logistics system that would have been revolutionary in its day. The paper is yellowed now, the ink faded, but the idea remains as brilliant and potent as it was then. I had the capital, I had the contacts, but I was terrified of the questions, the criticism, the possibility that a single calculation might be flawed. I was afraid of the smudges, the imperfections of reality. So, I protected it. I preserved its perfect theoretical dignity by locking it in this drawer, a tomb for the man I might have been. It was safer to be a man with a brilliant, secret plan than to be a man with a failed public venture. My mother's lessons had served me well. I had swallowed my ambition just as I had swallowed my tears, and in doing so I had starved myself. My whole life, I believed this caution, this impenetrable dignity, was a virtue I had cultivated myself. I saw it as a sign of intellectual and emotional strength, a testament to my own disciplined character. But sitting here now, in the deafening silence of my own making, I understand that it was never my own creation. It was a seed planted in me so long ago that I forgot it wasn't a part of my own nature. I was searching for the moment I made the choice to build these walls, but I realize now that I never made a choice at all. I was simply handed the blueprints and told it was the only way to build a house that could withstand the storms of life. I was a child architect building his own prison, believing it to be a fortress. The origin of my failure isn't in a single moment of cowardice in my adulthood. It's in a lesson I learned as a boy, a lesson that I mastered so perfectly that it consumed the man I was supposed to become. The foundation of this empty life was laid in the name of love. I can see her face now, as clearly as if she were standing in the doorway. My mother. I was 8 years old, and I had fallen from a tree, a foolish, boyish misadventure that left my knee bloody and my pride shattered. I ran to her, crying not just from the pain, but from the humiliation. She did not kneel down. She did not offer a hug. She took my chin in her hand, her grip firm, and looked directly into my tear-filled eyes. "Arthur," she said, her voice not cruel, but filled with a terrible, steely conviction. "You swallow your tears. You hide your pain. The world is not kind to boys who cry. A man who shows his cracks is a man who will be broken." I remember the feeling of that command. It was not advice. It was a law of physics. I choked back the sob, the burn in my throat a new, sharper pain than the one in my knee. In that moment, I learned the most devastating lesson of my life, that my own feelings were a shameful liability, and that my mother's love, and by extension, the world's respect, was conditional upon my ability to pretend I had none. That single lesson became the operating manual for my entire existence. It was the silent editor of every word I ever spoke, the unseen hand that stopped me from reaching out, the quiet whisper that turned courage into calculation. When I stood with Sarah in that gallery, it was my mother's voice that told me to offer a clever analysis instead of a simple, vulnerable feeling. Love, after all, is the most visible crack a person can have. When I held the final draft of my business plan, it was her voice that warned me against the public humiliation of failure, another crack for the world to exploit. Every potential friendship was held at arm's length. Every heartfelt impulse was strangled in its crib. Every dream was locked away to protect it from the possibility of being broken. I spent 77 years perfecting this flawless, uncracked exterior, believing I was building a monument to strength. Only now do I see that I was merely tending to a tomb. I was so faithful to her lesson that I became the man who could not be broken, because there was nothing real left inside to break. And so, the final piece of the puzzle slides into place. I am not a man who was afraid of failure. I was a boy who was taught to be terrified of being seen. My life has not been a series of poor choices. It has been the flawless execution of a flawed design. The impeccable armor I wear is not my own. It is a family heirloom, passed down from a woman who was herself afraid, who loved me so much that she taught me how to disappear in plain sight. There is no anger left for her, only a profound, hollow grief for the boy who learned his lesson too well. I look at my hands, resting on the arms of this chair, and for the first time I see them not as the hands of a failed man, but as the hands of a child who was given a shield instead of a hug. And I understand with a clarity that is both a relief and an agony that my only purpose now, the only act of meaning left to me, is to lay down this shield and show you the cracks it was meant to hide. My life cannot be a lesson in how to live, but it can be a desperate warning about the price of hiding. For the first time in my life, the silence in this house doesn't feel like an accusation. It feels like a space to breathe. The weight of 77 years of self-reproach, of seeing myself as the sole architect of this empty cathedral, has begun to lift. I see now that I wasn't a coward who chose safety. I was a dutiful son who followed the only map he was ever given. My mother didn't hand me a shield out of cruelty. She gave it to me out of her own deep, unspoken terror of the world. She loved me so much that she taught me how to be invisible, how to be safe, how to be nothing. And I, in my desperate need for her approval, became her masterpiece. There is no anger left, no bitterness, only a quiet, aching clarity. My life wasn't a failure to launch. It was the perfect, tragic completion of a flawed design. I am not the villain of my story. I am just the final, lonely paragraph. With this clarity comes a strange, almost painful recalibration of my entire world. The words I built my life upon, dignity, prudence, strength, they all crumble into dust. I see them for the elegant cages they always were. I spent a lifetime polishing the bars, believing it was honorable work. True dignity, I now understand, wasn't in the perfect Windsor knot or the witty deflection. It was in the courage to stand in that art gallery with Sarah and say, "I don't understand this painting, but I feel something when I look at it with you." True strength wasn't in locking away my dreams to protect them from failure. It was in the willingness to see them fall apart in the public square and still stand among the wreckage. I didn't fail at being strong. I succeeded magnificently at being afraid. And I have nothing to show for it but this well-kept silence and a suit for a man who never truly existed. And so, what is left? The past is a locked room. The future is a single unwritten sentence. But the story is everything. My life, this long rehearsal for a play that never opened, can finally have its premiere. Not as a tragedy to be mourned, but as a lesson to be studied. This is my final act of defiance against the silence. I will take this armor, this beautiful, suffocating shell, and I will shatter it for you. I will hold up every piece, every mistake, every moment of hesitation, and I will let the light shine through the cracks my mother taught me to hide. My redemption is not in finding a last-minute happiness for myself. It is in becoming the ghost that visits you tonight, the voice that whispers in your ear when you are about to choose the safe path over the true one. My life has no value as an example, but it may just be priceless as a warning. So I ask you to look at me one last time, not at the suit, not at the chair, but at the man who is finally visible now that the armor has been laid bare. My life is a testament to a single, devastating truth. You can win every battle you choose to avoid. I built a fortress of dignity so impenetrable that it kept out everything, including the very essence of life itself. I mistook caution for wisdom and silence for strength. I now know that true courage does not arrive like a guest you prepare for. It is born in the split second you choose to act despite your fear. It's in the stammered, "I love you," the terrifying first step of a new venture, the simple, messy act of showing up as you are, not as you think you should be. I spent a lifetime rehearsing for a life I was too afraid to live, and the only applause I received was the echo in this empty house. My greatest achievement was becoming a ghost long before I ever died. Do not make my mistake. Do not spend your days polishing the exterior while the interior starves. Look at your own life right now. What brilliant idea is locked in your drawer? What love is dying on your tongue for the sake of a clever word? What truth are you swallowing to maintain an image that brings you no joy? The walls you build to protect yourself from pain are the same walls that will imprison you in regret. The silence you cultivate for safety will one day become the deafening sound of your own absence. Please, do not wait for a moment of dizziness in front of a mirror to see the truth. Shatter your own armor. Live the life that is waiting for you, not the one you are rehearsing. Let your story be one of beautiful, glorious, imperfect engagement, not one of impeccable, sterile preservation. Your time is now. Don't just live it. Let it break you a little. It's how you'll know you were ever here.